and has put in a provision that would say the administration had to produce a comprehensive plan for transferring the terror suspects. But our staff member in DC, who I talked to, knowing you guys were coming, basically said it's Lamborn, it's the Republicans who refuse to move and allow stuff through. So, as far as closing Guantanamo, so
I don't know how long. It just seems that people are looking for political cover to do the right thing, and I don't know. But it gets to be a ridiculous length of time,
Oh yeah.
These are over half of the people that are still holding have been cleared.
Yeah.
That's what I don't get.
And,
How
that's against the whole concept of the rule of law.
Right.
You can't do that, except you can do it if you got a key to their cell. You can
Right.
But,
and I don't know, I mean, since they passed the bill that basically said you can't we're not gonna authorize any funding to do anything except what you're doing right there. That's probably more than anything keeping the people
but they can go ahead and borrow funds from the CIA.
No, I don't think so.
They move money around.
I don't think so, of
Well,
course.
you say, now that was a year ago. The thing that Bennett voted for did not pass?
Right, that was a year ago. No, it did pass, and it said you may not use any funds to move anybody out of Guantanamo. Michael voted
move them out.
to move them out. Michael voted against that.
Right,
I was just saying, in theory,
I
he agrees with closing it.
Right.
But when
So they
it's
got
gonna
money
come up,
to do what they're doing.
when it's gonna come up to allow a vote like that, or it's gonna end up being the mechanism. It's not just a clear vote, close it, okay, now go about your business closing it.
Yeah.
So, it
Why-
isn't gonna be clear cut.
What influence can Mr. Bennett have on the president, who's in the same party, who promised to close it in his first election?
Yeah,
And he's the commander-in-chief. He
Yeah.
ought to be able to do whatever he wants to do.
yeah, you think he would. It's been from the moment he took the oath of office, he's had half of the Senate and the House making sure he isn't successful with one thing he promised.
Yeah.
And he's done as much as he can. I happen to be a big supporter of the president and all that he's tried to do. I know a lot of people aren't and think he could do more. I think he's doing as much as he can with
Can you
his
explain
administration.
why the president can't close down a military operation when he's the commander-in-chief of the military?
Well, one really good one is the dollars that it would take to do it, and the votes that have been taken. I haven't watched every vote on Guantanamo in the past, so I'm not sure what Congress is how Congress has blocked him, but there have been votes that have prohibited his ability to do it.
Or the
And
money
and
that
it's against every concept of English common law and American law to habeas corpus and whatever. We've got people not charged with any criminal behavior in prison. We've kept them in prison for 11 years. I mean, that hasn't happened since Henry VIII. I know
That's
of
worse
it.
than the Japanese internment.
well, yeah.
I mean, part of that deal
It's
is the
longer.
indefinite war thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no end in sight still for the war on terror. So they can operate somehow under some war rules that are really aimed at non-state actors. They're not at war with Yemen or Pakistan, and yet that's where they scooped up a lot of these people. And well, that's the crux of it, and it appears that there will be no more war declarations. That's some of that dialogue the last 2 days in the Senate, when senators tried to pin down the people coming over from the State Department. They just said, well, the president probably could do this without that 9/11 resolution. So that it makes it sound like
The senators said that, or
the
the
absolute-
people in the State Department said
people in the
it?
State Department who were there to testify for the U.S. Senate said that. So
The
it
president
sounds
could
like
probably
we
do
don't
it?
need war declarations anymore.
Mhm.
You know, there really haven't been any, but they've kind of passed these sense of the Senate things
Mm-hmm.
for Iraq and Afghanistan, so that they didn't declare war, but they gave the president a free hand. Well, they're saying
Mm-hmm.
you don't even have to give the president a free hand, he has it. Well, I mean, this has gotten so murky that
Mm-hmm.
to deal with it legally, it sounds like the whole Pentagon is on an extra legal status.
Mm-hmm.
That they are no longer, other than the purse strings, you know, the Congress still appropriates the money, but they almost routinely do that.
Do you-
Something might be helpful to you.
Yeah.
18 months ago, I gave Hal
Uh-huh.
a 6-volume proposal that outlined the Dajdeet de-radicalization program, which was my plan.
Uh-huh.
The president didn't need any more authority. He
Okay.
could use the money he already had for Guantanamo,
Okay.
and he could clear everybody out of Guantanamo.
Okay. Under his authority.
Yeah, he didn't need any new authority.
Okay.
Because he wouldn't be transferring them to the U.S.
Okay.
So anyway, in an appendix to that,
Yeah.
I kind of laid out what the law is
Okay.
and how it applied to that particular proposal. You think Hal could get you a copy of that?
Yeah.
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 ACLU has been very, very strong.
Okay.
They just won an important case where a judge in D.C. or New York ordered them to produce the prison records of a guy who was alleged abuse. And they usually dodge around by saying, what you're asking for is classified, and therefore we can't get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that may well be overturned on appeal, often they are in the Supreme Court. Good luck getting anything out of them. But the fact is, there have been several things that the ACLU has done in the way of formal U.S. constitutional law, not having to rely on international law, which this is totally out of bounds with too. So those are some of the more mainstream groups that have done this.
I might be a little bit different than the rest of the group. My primary concern is those detainees who have already found to be completely innocent. That's about
Okay.
half of them.
Okay.
There is some cloud of suspicion around the other half. And in
Okay.
fact, about 10 of them are probably actual terrorists. 10 out of
Okay.
155.
Okay. That's what's the 155 is
That are
the
still there.
remaining.
Right.
No,
But
there are 155 still there.
I believe so.
And
That's
half of them, you think,
think
are
77.
but innocent prison?
Well, they are
Well,
declared
Whatever.
cleared
Declared.
for release
Okay,
is their
cleared.
status. Cleared
Yep.
for release.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a year-long process
Mm-hmm.
where the CIA, the Defense Department, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs,
Mhm.
Department of Homeland Security, everybody who had any say in whether or not these people were a threat,
Mm-hmm.
they formed a panel and they met and they
Mhm.
reviewed every
Mhm.
single case.
Mm-hmm.
And they found, of the people that are there now,
Mhm.
74 of them, they were picked up by mistake, essentially.
Okay.
And then in the last 3 months, since November, 3 more have gone through periodic review boards,
Okay.
and they've been cleared. There have been 799 people sent to Guantanamo. So 650 have gone home or
Okay.
gone somewhere else.
All right. Got it. Okay.
Or some have been tried. They have done a number of civilian trials, and those that the 8 or 10, they could do that. But every time they say, well, okay, in New York or D.C., we're going to have a trial for this person,
Mm-hmm.
it gets jammed up by, usually that's where the political pressure comes in. We can't have them in the federal prison system even,
Right.
which is baloney.
Well, and the money issue, to me, it costs a lot of money to run that base.
Sure.
Why,
Sure.
and they use that as the excuse, use the money they use to run it,
Yeah.
to send the people wherever they need to be sent. I don't
Right.
know why
Well, and
it
I
takes
think
money to
that's-
close it.
I think that part of It is.
There are two envoys, one in DOD and one in the State Department.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff Sloan in the State Department's taken the lead. He's arranged, I think, for a dozen or so to go home in the last few months.
Cliff, I'm sorry, Cliff who?
Sloan.
Sloan. Mm-hmm. Okay. 24 of the 77.
Well, the 77 are still there, so it was higher before he started.
Gotcha.
And
27
Uruguay
have
has just
gone
agreed to take 6.
What's that?
Uruguay has just agreed to take
Okay.
6 of them.
It seems to me it's pretty hard for American citizens, particularly guys like Iraqi veterans against the war, people like that, to understand that they are fighting to defend the Constitution when the Constitution isn't being honored in this situation.
I mean, that argument of not releasing people, here, people get out of prison, the recidivism rate for U.S. prisons is quite high.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the standard that you wouldn't release anybody unless you were sure they would not reoffend, it would be anybody, you know, we'd have twice the number of people in prison we do now. You finally just can't win that argument. I mean, that's against the concept of habeas corpus. It's against basic rule of law principles. And yet,
I actually had somebody this afternoon, we were doing signs. I had somebody say to me, we need that place
Yeah.
so we can hold people outside of the American legal system.
Yeah, that's about it.